Motivation is a symptom, never a solution for human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not interested in punishment reward mentality. I think external source of people who are driven from within and listen to their physiology and psychology to do what's really meaningful to them don't need to be governed by sociological and theological rewards and punishment systems. And they're driven inside to live authentically and with sustainable fair exchange with other people because they know that it works. It's smart. It's not because you should, it's a moral imperative. It's just something that it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd much rather live in that domain than to have external motivation.
Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. John Demartini. In this episode, John tells a beautiful story of how he went from wearing the dunce cap in the classroom, having a physical disability, and a childhood speech impediment, to later in life creating, developing, and employing a value system used by many individuals, entrepreneurs, schools, and corporations. Everyone will get a different lesson from listening to this episode, but for me personally, the most important message is that of the power of belief and the power of words, especially the words uttered from a parent's mouth to their children. John's mother communicated her belief and love to her son, and that is all it took for him to change the trajectory of his life. His many accomplishments will be listed in the bio within the show notes. So, welcome to episode number 20 with Dr. John Demartini. So, welcome again, John.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so where to begin? I mean, how about okay, so the podcast name, I Think I Can. I mean, we don't have to ask you about the I Think I Can moment in your life because all your life basically has been I Think I Can. Would you agree? From a very young age?
I can't say that's the case. I had learning difficulties as a child.
Mm.
I was told I would never be able to read, never be able to write, not communicate effectively, probably never amount to things, not go very far in life when I was in first grade. And I had learning difficulties, speech impediment, dyslexia. And I only made it through the elementary school, with asking questions to the smartest kids.
Hmm.
And that worked until I was 12. I passed. At 12, I moved to a small town outside of Houston, Texas, where there's a real low socioeconomic environment. Didn't have a whole bunch of smart kids. Failed, dropped out of school, and became a street kid at really 13. So I lived on the streets from 13 to 18. because school wasn't my thing, surfing was.
Hmm.
I knew how to stand on a surfboard, and I had good balance. And so I ended up hitchhiking at 14 to California, because I wanted to go to California to surf, and down into Mexico. And at 15, I made my way over to Hawaii, panhandling money in the beaches of California, and made enough money to fly to Hawaii. And I lived at first under a bridge, then a park bench, then a bathroom, then abandoned car, and eventually a tent. And I was a surf kid on the north shore of Oahu, surfing big waves. Got to surf up to 40-foot waves. And then I nearly died at 17, and right before my 18th birthday. And in the recovery of that, I was led to a particular class one night where a gentleman spoke and inspired me to believe that maybe I could overcome my learning problems and my challenges in reading and speaking. And I got so inspired that night listening to him that I thought, maybe I can read, and maybe someday I could become intelligent. So it wasn't until 18 I read my first book from cover to cover. And really then was just a picture book, a organic gardening book. And I tried to go back to school. I took a GED. I left Hawaii, flew back to LA, hitchhiked back to Texas. My parents taught me into taking a GED, a high school equivalency. And miraculously, with the guessing, literally closing my eyes and just guessing, passed that thing. So we didn't think of anything other than it was a miracle. And then I tried to go back to school, but I failed again. And I almost gave up on my dream of becoming, intelligent. And I was distraught. My mom found me in the living room crying and said, "What happened, son?" I said, I got a 27 on a test. I needed 72 to pass. And she said, "Oh." I said, "I guess I will never be able to read or write or communicate effectively. Probably won't go very far. Pardon, Mom. Guess I'll have to go back to surfing." And she said something to me at that moment. "Son, whether you become a great teacher and learn it and read, whether you go back to Hawaii and ride big waves or you return to the streets, I just want to let you know that your father and I are going to love you no matter what you do." Wow, that was a powerful moment.
Unbelievable.
When she said that, my hand went into a fist with this determination feeling, kind of like a no turning back feeling. And I saw a vision of me standing in front of a group of people speaking. And I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading and learning. I'm going to master this thing called speaking and teaching. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to travel whatever distance. I'm going to pay whatever price to give my service of love. And I'm not going to let any human being cross this planet. I'm not going to let any human being stop me, not even myself. And I was so determined that when I got up and I hugged my mom and I went into my bedroom, and I got a dictionary out, a Funk and Wagnall's dictionary, which I still have today in my office in Houston. And I started memorizing 30 words a day. And my mom would test me on 30 words on the pronunciation, spelling, meaning, and use. And I found out if I wrote out the word, the spelling, the meaning or definition, and wrote it in a sentence and applied it in a sentence, and I did it 20 times per word, at the end of the day, I could be able to recite those. And I grew my vocabulary 30 words a day. And for the next 2 years, about 20,000 words. And I started passing, and I started to actually go to do well in school. And I became the top of the class in a very short period of time. I became the one that wanted to learn, because I was reading then dictionaries and encyclopedias every day, and started to read 18 to 20 hours a day to overcome the learning challenges. And I never stopped that. Now I've read over 30,600 and something books, and read 8 complete sets of encyclopedias from cover to cover, book volumes to volumes. And so now my vocabulary is pretty good.
I would think so.
When I started teaching, I've been teaching now, this is my 50th year of teaching. This is the beginning of the 50th year, because I'm going on 68. And man, I love it. I can't think of anything else I'd rather do. I've now spoken in 170 countries.
Wow. No, I knew of your passion for teaching and travel from, you know, listening to you on other talks and going through your website somewhat. But I just want to just note a few things that you said. There's so many thoughts that came to my mind as you were speaking, and you know what it sounded like the real turning moment for you was, an expression of love, right, from your mother, is to know that, and it's ironically, I just posted this on, my Instagram yesterday, is that children really just need only two things in life, and that is to know that they belong and that they are significant. And that's really it. They need that more than shelter, as you showed, and maybe food for a certain period of time. And that's what made the difference for you. Now, another thing I want to ask is, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about your speaking and spelling and your learning disabilities, because my first career, I guess, was as a speech pathologist. So I can really resonate with that as well, how difficult that would have been for you, and the amount of practice and work that goes into something like that. But before I do that, I just, what is it that, how can I say this? If I'm working with you, let's say as a psychotherapist, and I saw you as someone that was 17 or 18 years old, and then I was working with you, and I also want to know if you ever attended any therapy, actually, or I'm sure mentorship. But if you said to me, yeah, but, in term, like in the sense of, no, I can't do that because of this and this and this. Sure, that sounds great, but this is my story. This is what I've been through. This is all my hardships, and this is why I'm here the way I am today. First of all, did you receive any therapy, and what do you think your response would have been, or how different might your life have been if you went to the buts about why you can't do better?
Well, I did go to a speech pathologist when I was a year and a half old.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think till 4. And I remember strings and buttons in my mouth as a kid, because we used to do these muscle exercises with strings and buttons.
So
you remember those, but
well, yeah, you had probably quite severe apraxia then, dyspraxia.
Yeah. So, but when I came back from Hawaii and took a GED, my determination to want to become intelligent, because when I was in first grade, I remember I started normal reading, and no matter what we did, it just wasn't working. I didn't get the words, didn't understand it. And I wrote like this because I was left-handed, which was sinister. See, I had a arm and leg deformity as a child too. I forgot that, and my arm was turned in and my leg was turned in, so I had to wear braces on from my middle of my thigh down to my feet, and from my up above my elbow down to thing, and like a Forrest Gump thing. And so everybody didn't know what to do with me. They didn't want to talk to me. Kids didn't want to talk to me. And kind of an oddball. I got out of those braces at age 4, and that's what made me start to run. I just wanted to run because I didn't like the constraint. And then the speech issue, because of that, kids, they made fun of you. But when I was in first grade and I couldn't read, I turned into kind of the class clown to try to dodge that, to get whatever. But then I went to remedial reading, and then finally I had to wear a dunce cap. I wore a dunce cap when I was in first grade. And Berdell Dalrymple, who was another kid that had more challenges than I did, we used to sit and look out the window and wear a dunce cap until we decided we were going to read. That's what they did. So I turned that into a wizard's cap. Now I made it into a wizard's cap, I guess. But so I didn't really want to be the dunce, but I didn't know a strategy how to navigate through that. I was actually intelligent on a surfboard and intelligent in sports. I just wasn't academically in reading capacity. So it wasn't like I was not skilled at learning how to surf.
Exactly.
Learning how to hitchhike. I was a good hitchhiker. I knew how to panhandle really good.
Yeah.
I knew how to get food when I needed to, and little things, but I just wasn't reading. And I used to have my buddies, my surf buddies, read for me. And they one of them I still know, and he thought it was the weirdest thing. John used to say, "Well, would you read to me this?" He never could figure out why I would ask for that. But so I did not go to any therapist. I've never been to a therapist in my life. I just had a determination at 17, 18. It turned 18 when I went back home, and I passed that GED, but failed that test. I said, I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to give up on this thing. And I made this determination. And when there's a determination, I always say that there's nothing in the way. Everything is on the way. And anything you can't say thank you for is baggage. Anything you can say thank you for is fuel. So I'm not interested in being a victim of my history. I'm interested in being a master of my destiny. I was focused on wanting to be a master of my life and not be a victim. And you know what, if you want to call it therapy, I think it was David Carradine in the little weekly show called Kung Fu.
Yeah.
He was my mentor, because I used to sit in this lotus position and watch this show and started meditating. And I just said, no, I'm not stopping on this thing. And my vocabulary, once the vocabulary hits, 500 words, you're already getting up to what a lot of people are, that's where they are. That didn't take but a month or so. That's a month, not even a month.
Yeah.
And so I just made a commitment to do 30 words a day. And then I started reading these dictionaries and encyclopedias, and I lived in them. And I even made a commitment to build and write an encyclopedia set, which I did. I created a 25,000. I mean, it was just tons and tons of writing. I've written thousands and thousands, 360,000 pages of writings now. So I just constantly read and write, trying to learn. Because I found that the faster I gave it out, and the most when I wrote it, I organized it. And then if I taught it and spoke it, I would retain it. And so by the time I was, 18, 20s, by the time I was 20 and 22, 23, I was teaching every single day, whatever I was reading every day. So I started having following. When I was at the University of Houston, I had under the trees at lunch and in the cafeteria, if it rained, 100, 125, 150, sometimes 400 people would gather around and ask questions, and I'd have a class every day. By the time I was in professional school, I had classes 7 nights a week, and I was charging for it. I made $100,000 a year teaching when I was going to professional school, teaching every night. So I just figured out how to, I always say, what is it I would absolutely love to do, and how do I get handsomely paid to do it?
Yeah.
Because I wanted my vocation and my vacation to be the same thing. I didn't want to have to go do a job to make money and then go do what I really wanted to do. I wanted to do what I love to do and get paid to do that. I made a commitment to that.
Yeah. Okay. And so, I wanted to, I did want to comment on, your strategy in terms of learning too. It made a lot of sense. I mean, writing, you're using all your senses, writing, listening, the visualizing, and the kinesthetic part of it, like just, I think that's what really enhanced the learning for you, correct? I mean, it wasn't just reading.
No, it became reading and writing. I read and write every day. To this day, 50 years almost, I read and write every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've written so much. I mean, I've written for 1,500 magazines, 1,530 magazines around the world now. So I write and read and write every day. But I learned that articulating, if I learn something, the faster I give it to somebody, the more it retains.
Mm.
And I also learned something. I asked myself what worked and what didn't work every single day. And I wrote down what worked and what didn't work every day to refine my skills. And I learned there was a thing called conscious, explicit learning, and also implicit, unconscious learning and reading. And I developed a speed reading and learning process eventually that allowed me to not question what I learned. And that was learned by a serendipitous speech one day, that I didn't even know I knew something, and it came to the surface when it was needed. And so I then started just devouring visual reading and just snapshotting pages in my mind, and didn't care if I consciously remembered it or not. I knew when I needed the information from that, it would come to the surface. And I'm absolutely certain that's a powerful tool that most people don't use. And so I use that tool, and I've been reading.
That makes a lot of sense. Because often when I think about my university years, I might not remember the exact content, but I remember where I saw it on the page. I
Yeah.
just that you brought that up right now, and that's so true. Yeah.
I had a very interesting thing. I was in 1979, I was 24 years old, and I was studying chiropractic, dentistry, and also oncology at the time. And I was lecturing on all of those. And I was devouring every book that was available on both oncology and dentistry at the time. I read every book in Houston, Texas on those two topics, and that I could find in any library, bookstore, healthcare, health library, University of Texas Medical School, Baylor Medical School, you name it. And because I had the opportunity to speak at a big oncology conference, and I was a student, and I was the only one that was doing that, because I was the president of the Cancer Prevention Control Association in Houston at the time. And people wanted, this oncologist came there and heard me speak and said, whatever you just said, I've got a conference, you need to let people know about it. There's a theory about what led to cancer. And to prepare for that, I wanted to make sure I knew everything that was available at the time, because I knew I was going to speak in front of 1,000 of the leaders in the world. So I devoured every freaking book and made sure I had that in my head before I did that. And that pushed me to read one day 11,000 pages. I was just devouring literature, books after books, 39 books that day on oncology. And I didn't even know I didn't know how much I would retain, but I just knew I was going to get it all completed. I made a commitment to get that completed before I went to that conference. And I did the same thing in dentistry. And I was speaking at a dental conference, and this guy was a heckler. And he says, I've never heard of that. Where in the heck did you get that? Give me a reference. And out of the blue, not on a conscious level, a photographic picture of Gray's Anatomy came, and I was literally seeing the entire 2-page system open up, captions under pictures. I could verbatim read the thing.
Wow.
And I read the reference, and I just literally read it, and I was just seeing it in my mind, and everybody just went. And they threw papers at this guy and said, let the guy continue going. Don't quit interrupting this kid. And I was a student, and I wasn't even a doctor yet. And these doctors were wanting me to speak. It was fantastic. It was like a dream come true. But I figured if I worked, whenever they said in a class, here's the textbook for it, I would do a minimum of 10 textbooks. And I would have those devoured by the time the class was over. I said, I'm not stopping at average. I want to be extraordinary. So I'm going to go and study this thing inside and out. And I even got a test one time in neurology. This is so funny. I had a Dr. Nash give me a test in neurology when I was involved in it. And the test was one of those things you put A, B, or C, or D, or E. You just fill in a little dot with pencil.
Yeah. And
I wrote down A, according to so-and-so, B, outdated, reference this, C, yes, but, and here's 2 other things that need to update it. And I answered this thing, and he failed me. The guy failed me. And so I said, I was insulted. I go, what do you mean he failed me? These are accurate answers. Mm-hmm. And so I went up with 49 books in 2 boxes and came up to his office with all these little pieces of paper on the pages referencing what I'd written. And I sat down, I said, you failed me. And he said, well, you can't answer a test like that. You just you can't put those kind of answers in. I said, wait a minute now, who are you who are you as an authority to say? And I just laid out all those texts. And he said, you read all these books? And I said, I came here to learn neurology. I didn't come here to pass the test.
Good point.
And he placed me out of the class, said, you're out of my class. You don't have to take the test. And then a few weeks later, 2.5 weeks later, he got busted for kissing one of the girls in the class, and he got suspended temporarily. He called me up. He says, will you take over and teach my class? I said, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
So I got to teach the neurology class that I was supposed to be taking. And that was like a heaven to me, to be able to actually push myself to new levels of learning.
Wonderful.
So I've had some adventure on the learning process. Thank God for the learning challenges as a child. I wish I could have gone back to the first grade teacher, put my arms around her, because she said what I needed to have for my void in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She probably said he'll probably do just the opposite of what I say. He's one of those kids, left-handed dyslexic kids.
Right. Well, so I like what you said. I am not stopping at average. I want extraordinary. That's so, you were determined. You used the word determination. Is there a difference between determination and motivation?
I'm glad you asked that. Every human being lives by a set of priorities, set of values in their life, things that are most to least important. And whenever they are doing whatever is highest on their value, which is the most intrinsic of the values, they're spontaneously inspired from within to act. You don't need to tell a kid who loves video games, Johnny, go do your video game.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to do that. But anything low on their values, homework, chores, cleaning room, you have to motivate them with reward if they do it, punishment if they don't, kind of thing. Extrinsic values or extrinsic motivation is not where it's at. I'm not a motivational speaker. I don't want to persuade people, rhetorical persuasion. I want to help people find out what they're intrinsically inspired to do and help them structure their life where they are intrinsically driven and they don't need motivation. Mm-hmm. Motivation is a symptom, never a solution for human beings. Mm-hmm. And I'm not interested in punishment reward mentality. I think external source of people who are driven from within and listen to their physiology and psychology to do what's really meaningful to them don't need to be governed by sociological and theological rewards and punishment systems. And they're driven inside to live authentically and with sustainable fair exchange with other people because they know that it works. It's smart. It's not because you should, it's a moral imperative. It's just something that it works. Mm-hmm. And I'd much rather live in that domain than to have external motivation. So I don't motivate people. I don't want to know what that is. I don't know. I'm interested in helping people find out what they do. I had a very cool kid. He's a bit autistic and he loves his little video games. And the mother's trying to get him to do well in school. And I said, and he's supposedly hyperactive in some areas. And I said, but when he's doing a certain video game, he's totally focused, he's engaged, he can sit there for 6 hours straight, not stop for a minute, don't even take a break. This is what he loves. If you can't link the classes he's taking to that, you won't engage him. You can't force him to take classes. If you care about the kid, you want to honor the child's values, whatever is inspiring to them, and then articulate the class information in terms of that highest value of the child. And the child will then, once it sees how it's on the way, not in the way, and it's going to help them get what they want, they'll take it in. They'll just absorb that information. So I'm a firm believer, and I've proven that. We took, in a township in South Africa, Alexander Township, we had a 27% pass rate in this particular school, this high school. 27% were passing high school. That's it, 27 out of 100. And we went in there and took the values of the teachers and linked the curriculum to the values of the teachers, which I call teaching today for tomorrow. And then we took the class students and we found out what their values are and we linked the classes to their values. And then we did a linking process between the kids' values and the teachers' values. So they were not talking autocratically down to them, but they were equal and honoring each other's values. And the following year, 97% of the kids passed matric. 97, unheard of.
Unheard of. Yeah.
Unheard of. I was expecting 40.
Yeah. Yeah.
97. Blew my mind. So every child wants to learn. They just want to learn what's inspiring to them, what's meaningful to them. And they're not always given permission to do that. They're trying to be fit into the society's box about how it should be instead of what is that engages them. I learned from Marilyn Wilhelm, who's an amazing teacher, to help children find what they're really calling to do. And she would find out what the children were naturally inspired to want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And she honored that. And so she found out that little Johnny loved baseball. So she would say, Johnny, in 1954, who is the leader in baseball? What was the winning team in America? And he would say, and Billy, you know everything about cars. What was the number one selling car at that time? And Mary, you're working on being a ballerina. Who was the leading ballerina at the time? And she was engaging each one of those children in what was most meaningful to them and letting them teach the class. The class was the kids teaching what inspired them. And everybody was learning about all of them. And she created tests on what was the real life of these people and what was their inspiration, because people want to study and learn and talk about what's meaningful to them. And these kids, by the time they were 13, were entering into college and running companies and were doing amazing things. I mean, she was an amazing teacher. And I watched this and I said, well, that's the kind of approach to kids that with adults even, doesn't matter what age. So finding out what's intrinsically driving them is essential in the learning process.
But, as my, I think, high school child would say right now, like he does recognize this. And I know his passion is more into, being creative, and whether that's drawing or playing music. And so he does kind of rebel a little bit and saying, Mom, the stuff that I'm learning right now is, I know it's useless to me, and
that's why they're not engaged.
Exactly. So, but like the fact is, I think, and maybe you might argue with me, it's like nowadays, you do need to have some sort of post-secondary degree, I would say.
But it's simple. It's simple. What you do is you ask him a simple question. Let's say he wants to be a musician or he wants to be an artist.
Yes.
And I would ask your son, who's the most inspiring artist that you can think of that inspires you the most?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Salvador Dali. Great. What level of schooling did he do?
Mm-hmm.
And what did he study?
Mm-hmm.
And I start linking how their education led them to their results and what educational pathway. I got to share this story. I had this kid this mother came to me and said, I got a 22-year-old son. All he does is watches TV all day. And I said, well, that means you must be paying for things, because otherwise he'd be working.
Right.
Well, I guess I am. I'm rescuing him. I said, well, if you rescue them, you're going to disempower them. So you got to give them some accountabilities. But so anyway, he was sitting and I said, so let's go find out. She says, well, can you straighten him out and get him to do well in school and in college and da-da-da. And so I sat with him and I said, I see you love TV. He says, I love TV. I said, what's the most common things you study? He says, CSI, anything to do with forensic science and discovering criminal behavior and who's, why they do it and what they're doing. And I'm anticipating and studying that. I said, does your mom know that you're not just watching TV, you're actually studying only those shows? She goes, no, she doesn't pay attention. She's always yelling at me for watching TV. I said, is that what you want to do? He says, of course, that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the mother and I said, your son wants to be involved in deciding and discerning, why people do what they do and why they go to be criminal and how to solve cases. And she looked at me and says, you do? And he goes, that's all I want to do, Mom. So we went and looked online for what is the path to go to get that career, that degree? What do you need to know? What do you need to study? Do you need to go and be a policeman and go through a training? Do you need to go through an educational process? What's the pathway? We went and investigated that. And the moment we found a pathway on how he could become that, and the mom was okay with that path, as long as there was some sort of a path of education,
mm-hmm.
He absolutely took off. And she didn't care if he was watching TV because she knew he was studying. She didn't care what, and he wanted to study anything that would help him do that. So anything, we got him taking every word that he learned on TV and look it up and try to make sure he understands it. And then what do we need to do to study that? He was alive because he could not see how the classes he was taking in school was going to help him do it. So if you can't see how the classes you take are helping you fulfill what you would love to do, you're not going to be engaged. You're going to be in your dopamine and down in your amygdala instead of your executive function. So I specialize in asking these young people who are wanting to learn how specifically is the class they're taking in school helping them do it. If they can't see it, they're going to go blank. But I help them make the links. And once they make the links, they can excel. I had a kid in South Africa at St. Stithians who wanted to climb Mount Everest. And he was going to drop out of school at 16 years old and climb Mount Everest. And he was done. Then the headmaster contacted me and said, look, can you do anything with this kid to keep him in school? I said, sure, I can do it. So I met with this kid and I said, you're going to climb Mount Everest. I've been to Mount Everest. I know what that's like. I said, I got a question for you. What are your CO2 levels and what are your oxygen levels at certain altitude? He goes, I don't know, man. I said, you don't know those details and you're going to go climb Mount Everest and not know those details? He goes, do I need those details? I said, you're not going to go climbing Mount Everest without having some understanding about your oxygen levels and your red blood cells and things. Are you having chemistry in your school? And he says, well, yeah. I said, have you asked your teacher to make sure that you're prepared to go to Mount Everest? He goes, no. I said, man, I'd have your teacher as a consultant for the Everest system and learn everything you can about that before you go climbing that altitude. And I said, why don't you get your teacher to work for you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So before I want to step into, a little bit from learning to more of the values, and because I took your online, value determinator, which was quite interesting. And also because I work a lot with couples and relationships, I want you to also speak about how values tie into finding your soulmate or whatever you might want to call that person. But okay, do you feel like there's a rise of ADHD in children? And if so, what do you feel is the solution for that? Because that's a hot topic.
Well, I've had the opportunity to work with ADHD for 44 years now, I think 43 years. And can I share a story as a way of sharing the information?
Please.
Okay. So I had this kid, this young boy who is 8 going on 9, and his mother come into my clinical positioning at the professional school I was going to. I was clinically working with people, and she came in, and this kid is literally running in a 10-foot room, running back and forth, nonstop, making noise, just running. She's so used to it, she just kind of doesn't pay much attention to it, but it is a bit distracting, It's just running and running back and talking and making noise and running and back, like this. A classical, super hyper ADHD kind of thing. And at first I'm a little distracted by it, and there's a part of me that's authoritarian and, like, have a seat, young kid. But then I realized, no, this is he's now going to be, and I was there to working with her, not him. But I thought, no, this is an opportunity. I can maybe help this boy. So I paid close attention. I said, when you go to your son's room, what's the dominant thing you see? What does he fill his space with? It turned out to be posters of trains, train models, train magazines. His space was train related. Because I always say that in proxemics, you have an intimate space. Yeah. You've got a personal space, a social space, and a public space. And in his most intimate and personal space, it's always around trains. So I found that. And then I look at what he spends his time on is reading about trains, looking at trains, talking about trains. So I stopped the conversation once I saw an indicator that trains were high in his values. And I said to the kid as he's running back and forth, I said, what's the longest train you've ever seen in your life? And he stopped, put his hand like this, looked up, and he started to rattle off a number of cars it had. I said, great. And he started to run again. I said, how many tank cars were there? And how many flatbed cars? And how many box cars? I started asking him details, and he stopped and went like this. And he started literally rattling off things roughly. And he stopped, and I said, you love trains? Yep. I said, you fill your space in your room with train stuff? And he goes, yep. I said, and when you love, spending time with trains, and he modeled, yeah, and she says, that's all he does. I can't get him to do anything else but that. I said, fantastic. And what energizes you is anything to do with trains? And when you get money, do you buy train stuff? And he goes, that's anytime he gets a chore and he does get some money, he wants to buy another train thing, model or train magazine. It was not hard to see that going through the value determination process, that the 13 questions were pointing to trains. So I said that anything that's not linked to train is going to be disengaging. Anything that's linked to train is going to be engaging to him. So I want you to take him over to the refinery area, because I asked him, where do you love watching trains the most? He said, the refinery. I said, take him to the refinery and let's go where the biggest train is. And I want him to do an analysis. I want to know the ratios of every type of car that's in there. I want a list of every car, the ratios mathematically. I want you to ask, what exactly are the countries where these these cars are coming for? They'll be labeled on it. Try to find the language on it. So I'm linking language, I'm linking mathematics, I'm linking society to it. I'm linking mathematics to it. And I wanted to go in and start doing it. Now, this kid all of a sudden is now fully engaged in a project on anything to do with trains, and did an enormous insights on the mathematics of the train ratio. He had them laid out, counted every type of train, kept records of them, organized them. It was a masterpiece. And while he was doing that, he was focused, present, not hyperactive, engaged, because he was out of his amygdala and now was in his executive function. And because the amygdala is where the ADHD lives. Mm-hmm. And the executive function, once you find out what's highest on your value, you move up there. And that's the governing center, the self-governing center with the transmitters of glutamate and GABA and acetylaspartate. They go in there and they neutralize things and balance out the impulses and instincts of the amygdala. So we got him going, engaged on that. And we kept linking new things. I want to know, what is the language and what are the letters of the language? So he was studying language and what countries, how many countries. Let's get a map of the world and let's find out what countries, where all those box cars and how they got there and how they were shipped there. And let's map that out. And let's look at let's go find out what the value of those cars are. Where do you buy those cars? And I just started to expand his connection to trains. What language is on that? Let's study language. We kept mapping out and linking all the rest of his school classes to box cars and tank cars. And we went in there, we found out the tank cars were there for the refinery for oil. And I said, and where is those being shipped to and where are they coming from? So we started looking at trade, economics, input and output, right? We kept branching that over to every area until he was now wanting to love and study all those things, because it's going to help him with his love for trains. Okay,
that makes sense. So and I was making some links as you're speaking here, but let's say now we move to the 20-year-old in university. So we could, we can just even say 24, something like the adult brain, and feels he or she cannot concentrate on his studies. And, they want to go to see their GP to get a prescription for Adderall. There's that person, but then there's also, I want you to speak about a little bit, is I have many adults also at 35 or so, or 45 saying, I finally, was diagnosed with adult ADHD, and it's been a game changer for me now that I'm taking this prescription. So I'm
What do you do with that?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm guessing, I'm thinking more of, let's say, the 20 or 24-year-old or whatever. I'm guessing, I'm linking an emotion to some of this, and I think the fear of being good enough. I do think social media and all the bells and whistles, all the animation of that, is of course a much more um attention, magnet than words on a page that might be in a textbook. And also, the fear of missing out, the fear, like I think that person's distraction is, what am I missing? Am I looking good enough? Am I getting enough likes? Or so I'm thinking that for maybe that age. And then the older adult, I think possibly it's again connected to fear. And am I doing a good enough job in life? Do I value, am I respected? Am I getting notarized for the work I do? Am I good enough dad? Am I good enough husband? If I, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's all value driven. Every
Mm-hmm.
decision an individual makes is based on what they believe will give them the greatest advantage or disadvantage at any moment in time based on the associations they've made through their life. And their perceptions, decisions, or actions are all value driven. So their behaviors are value driven. So if they have a high value, there's some people that have a high value on business. Some people have a high value on family. Some have a high value on learning. Some have a high value on social politics, and some have a one on spiritual or religious ideas. And some people are academics, and some people want to be in wealth. So I don't judge what they value most. I start with what they value most and expand it by linking things to it, and then get them engaged. And I am absolutely certain. I've had so many people have said, well, I can't do it without a drug. And I go, really? Let's try. Let's just see. And I haven't had anybody that I can't neutralize and get them poised and present, because I just ask them a simple question. Go to a moment where you're present, not distracted. And I've not seen one case they didn't have some moment in their life where they were able to engaged. But what happened is they weren't honoring that as a value in life because it was not matching what everybody else was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're overruling that and saying, well, that's not what's important in life. I need to be important here. But what's important to them is where we got to start.
Mm-hmm.
Because even that 35-year-old person that's now taking Adderall or whatever, there's something in their life, and it may be when they're on social media. And believe it or not, my daughter was a socialite. She was a social. She, forget class, forgets this, socialite. She specialized in that. She's a fashion designer and gets out and socially and puts social engagements together, and was at leading New York Fashion Week and was doing all kinds of stuff because her expertise was that. And it wasn't mathematics. She hired a wealthy guy, and she's now marrying him to take care of that part. We sometimes don't realize that we can delegate things that aren't where our inspiration is and excel in what is our inspiration and do incredible. So I don't like to put people in boxes. I don't want to put a label on somebody. I'd prefer not to give them a drug if there's a way around it. Although there's some that may prefer it because it's a lot more easy to do that than to actually learn how to master the game of life. But I'm absolutely certain that same person that's got this attention deficit or this hyperactivity, or whatever, there's some place in their life where they're present. I start there. And they're not honoring it when they're started sometimes. But there's a place where they do it. And it may be their social life. They may be incredible when it comes to social. They may be incredible when it comes to trains.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever addressed that train. In the entire time of that child, nobody honored the train. I was the first guy that honored his trains.
Yeah.
I had a guy, I was at Harvard. I was speaking to the Harvard Divinity School. And I was getting ready to go in to speak. And they were in this little, I guess, a small little room that was kind of a mixture where all these classrooms were attached, and the theater. And there was a guy studying and getting ready to do a mathematics test. And he was struggling. He was frustrated. And I just happened to be sitting there, and I was waiting about 25 minutes. And so I said, got a test coming up, huh? And he goes, yeah, I'm not prepared. I said, you mind if I make a comment about it? Did I maybe give some tip on that? He says, yeah. What are you studying? He says, well, math test. I said, just out of curiosity, when you have no responsibilities, what is it you love doing most in your life? What is it? He says, I'm skiing, man. I'm a skier buff. I said, is that your dream, to be in skiing? And he goes, I love skiing. Every minute I am, I'm out on the slope skiing. I said, fantastic. I said, just out of curiosity, what are you studying in math? He said, we're studying inclined planes, we're studying forces, and we're applying that. And I said, isn't that interesting? Skiing is an inclined plane, isn't it? I guess it is. I said, how is studying math? I started linking, how is studying this math going to help him in skiing? If you know exactly your position and the angle and the gravitational force, and you know the type of snow and the if it's fresh snow or not, and you know the friction levels and everything else, all those levels can help you, and the math can help you become a greater skier. So I showed him how studying the math is going to help him become a leader in skiing. And now he's engaged, and now he never thought about that. He just says, oh, math. I want to ski, man. I linked skiing to math. And the moment he did, he got inspired. In 25 minutes, I had this kid inspired to want to study math now. And because now he saw it on the way, it goes into the executive center, out of the amygdala, which is where you're all distracted from impulses and instincts. And all of a sudden he was poised. And I went in and lectured. He went in and took a test. When I came out, I waited for him to come out of that class just to see how he did. He said, I was calmer, I was more present, I was more engaged when I took the test, because I was thinking of how it's going to help me in the future on my ice, on my working out on the slopes, the slopes or whatever. I said, that really helped me. And so if we get people engaged, which means they can see how whatever they're doing is helping them fulfill what's most meaningful, inspiring spontaneously in their life, they will not only calm down, they'll not only want to get engaged, they're going to want to learn, and they'll retain the information and apply the information.
So would you say you have a gift towards being able to show people that? Because no? Okay, so they should be able to figure, okay, so let's say there's someone who, inspiring 22-year-old who needs to complete calculus and statistics in order to get into a business school, that they require that. How do you link business and calculus?
If they don't see how taking that it's going to help them in that, so you start doing this as you find out what is important to them. Making money. Do they have a dream to be an entrepreneur, a wealthy entrepreneur, like a Bezos or something? Okay, great. That's your values. Great. Just out of curiosity, what is the rate of acceleration of the interest rates in order to become a vastly billionaire? How much you're going to have to accelerate the growth of your income? I start talking about what's invaluable to them, and I put, because calculus is the rate of change, from position to velocity to acceleration. It's the rate of change. Differential is. And so I basically start showing them how their acceleration of interest rates and their return on investments, and start about what the growth of the business is and what the profit margins are. I can put all that into calculus. And once I put that into calculus in business, I go, oh, are you going to want to know that? Do you think that Jeff Bezos has himself or somebody else that's managing, making sure those numbers are detailed? The robber barons, the great robber barons of the industrial age, they all had to know the numbers. They were very much into the numbers. And with calculus, we can actually look at the rate of growth of our company and look if we're competitive. All these are factors. So I just start linking how the calculus is going to be in business. And once they see it and they start making the connections, calculus is important to them. It's not until then.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to the importance of values. And with when it comes to relationships, because I find, it's a question that I've asked first of all, in the way I work with couples, more and more, I feel like I need to see these people individually. For the majority of the relationship work I do with them, it's not so much communication problems as, they all come in saying the same thing. Oh, we don't know how to communicate. But if I separate them and work with them on an individual basis, I feel like I get much further with them. And that all ties into, how you value yourself and self-concept and et cetera, right? And I think I'm going to have to get you on another episode to speak more about, the law of attraction and, manifestation and the power of belief and all of that. But I that is a question that I do ask them, is to, what are the things you value the most, and how does that compare to your partner, for example? A lot of people have difficulty even, they say, can you even give me an example of what values are, or like what my core values might be? And so, like, tell me what you feel like the impact of that would be, if in terms of, if people would determine prior to getting into a relationship what their values are. And you don't call them core values. You list it's 7 values, I think it is.
No.
No?
What I do is I go through it. I've been studying values 44 years
Mm.
and lecturing in that field for many, many years. And many people just pull out of their air a list of things they think are important to them. And I have no interest in that. I'm interested in what their life demonstrates.
Oh,
That's all I'm interested in. Because people will say, well, peace and integrity and all this other
honesty.
crap.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and no, there's no such thing as an honest person anyway. We're all tweaking things all the time. So I don't waste my time on those idealisms. Those social idealisms are just moral hypocrisies. I'm interested in what their life demonstrates is most important. And I look at how they fill their space. I look at how they spend their time. I look at what energizes them. I look at where they spend their money. I look at what they're most ordered and organized in. I look at where they're most disciplined and reliable spontaneously. I look at what they think about, visualize, and internally dialogue with themselves about most, about how they want their life that shows evidence of coming true, not fantasies. I look at what they want to bring conversations to most frequently and want to talk about most. I look at what inspires them with tears in their eyes and what's common to the people who inspire them. I look at what their goals are that they persevere on and don't stop until they achieve them. And I look at what they spontaneously want to learn about. And there's a pattern. And if those answers are honest, there's a beautiful pattern, and it's like smacking you in the face what's really important to them. Mm-hmm. And it may not be what they think it should be, but I'm not interested in what they think it should be, or ought to be, or supposed to be, or got to be, or must be, according to some outside authority. I'm interested in what their life demonstrates. Now, whatever's highest on an individual's values, their ontological identity revolves around it. So if you have 3 beautiful children under the age of 5 and you're a mother, and you are asked, who are you? You're going to say, I'm a mother. Mm-hmm. If you go to an entrepreneur that's got 3 companies, he's not going to, even though he has 3 kids, he's going to say, I'm an entrepreneur. You go to me, I'm going to say, I'm a teacher, an educator. Mm-hmm. Whatever your highest value is, your identity revolves around. Now, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you want to be loved and appreciated for who you are. Mm-hmm. And who you are revolves around what you value most. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know what your highest values are, and you're trying to live in some social idealism, you're going to have internal conflicts all the time. Mm-hmm. And you're going to live with, I should, I ought to, I'm supposed to, instead of I love to. I'm inspired by it. So the most powerful question in relationships I've seen is a very simple question. How is what my partner is dedicated to, and what they're inspired by, and what they love doing, and what their identity revolves around, whatever that is, how is it helping me fulfill mine? Mm. If they can't see it, I guarantee you they're going to feel challenged. They're going to get self-righteous. They're going to get narcissistic. They're going to get subjectively biased. They're going to try to tell that person how to be different and change and try to fix them. And they're going to alienate the person. And then they're going to be surprised when they have an affair with somebody. Right. But if they can go and find out how specifically their behavior as they are, who they are, is helping them fulfill what they are, if they can answer that, and I make them answer that 50 to 100 times, and to the brain is neuroplastically woven where they go, exactly who they are is the one that I'm fulfilled by. And if you do that back, how's what I'm dedicated helping them fulfill what they're dedicated to? And answer that 50 to 100 times. Once those links, neuroplastic links by Hebbian rule are linked, you don't need to fix anybody. You appreciate them for who they are. And they're not going to have the same values. You're never going to marry somebody with the same values. If any 2 people are exactly the same, one's not necessary. You get somebody that's like, the purpose of marriage is not happiness, as I tell people. I joke with people. The purpose of it is to find somebody to delegate lower priority things to, because they're going to specialize in the stuff you don't want to do. Right. And you're going to specialize in what they don't want to do. That's what a relationship's about. So you want somebody that can, when they talk about what's important to them, it puts you to sleep so you get a good night's sleep. I'm joking.
Right. So like for like an example, like I think I heard you speaking about this before is, I mean, your highest values is to teach and to travel. Like, yeah, you're passionate about
Learn,
both.
teach, and travel. That's it.
Learn, teach, and travel. Yeah. And so ideally you would love to marry someone who is more of a caregiver, someone who loves cooking, someone who
No.
Oh,
It,
no?
it doesn't matter what that is. My wife, I've not cooked since I was 24 years old. My wife only cooked twice, and I begged her never to do it again. I hire people to take care of those things that she is not inspired by and I'm not inspired by, because if I'm forcing her to do something she's not inspired by, I'm going to be castrated.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So, but you have the means to do that. And I think,
I got the means because I learned to do that. Many people think, well, when I get money, I can do it. No. You end up making income when you delegate lower priority things and get on to doing what you love doing that serves people. Both of us became wealthy because we learned to do that.
So you prioritize what you're passionate about and what you're authentically driven towards, and because you did that, you were able to just monetize that in a sense.
That's it. Because when you can't wait to get up in the morning and do a service, people can't wait to get the service.
Exactly.
Now, I don't call it passion. The word passion actually comes from the etymology of pati and passio, which means to suffer. I don't use the word passion. It means to suffer. Compassion means to suffer with somebody. I'm not interested in suffering. An inspired mission is different than a passion. A passion is an impulse of the amygdala. An inspiration of the executive center is what something you are literally inspired to do, and you have planning and you think out of the pros and cons and you work your way towards this long-term objective. An inspired mission is not an immediate gratification. So I don't use the word passion, but I'm a firm believer is that whatever that is that inspires them and whatever inspires me, they can be linked. You don't need to go, well, I need a person that does this. It doesn't matter really who they are. What matters is, can you see how what they're dedicated is helping you fulfill what you're dedicated to? Because if you're living in a country and there's very few people to choose from, you're going to take whatever's available. You live in a city. If you came from a small town and moved to the city, you probably go, well, there's more options than I first realized. There's a higher probability of divorce. You go from a city and go to the country, you're probably going to have a higher probability of longevity because you got fewer to select from. So you're automatically going to pick according to what your selections are, but you're going to end up learning how to have a balance of similarities and differences. A relationship needs a balance of similarities and differences, not all similar. That's boring. And all different. That's burnout. You need a balance of boredom and burnout. You need to be able to tell your spouse, you're a perfect balance of boredom and burnout, babe.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's what you maximally grow when you have support and challenge, not support without challenge or challenge without support. You need both. You need a bantering with somebody that you respect. And they have totally different sets of values. Yeah, you rarely see people exact same set of values married to each other. That's not going to happen.
Okay, well, perfect. You answered that just perfectly. So, and it's, I'm going to have to leave you go here, but I think we're ending on a really nice, in a really nice spot too, because I do want to have you back on, and I think we can do the sequel because you just sort of got into, discussing, like I feel like many people have a real difficult time discerning what do they really want out of life and perhaps their relationship, but also how do you get from being putting that in your mind's eye, being focused and decide on what you want out of life, and then actually achieving what you want in life, because just that question alone causes people a problem, right? Because what they want and what they do not yet have is causing a bit of a problem. And I would love to have you back on to help people, come to a solution for that.
Absolutely. I do that. In fact, some of one of the professors that came to my program in Japan and learned all about the values training process that I developed. And he's now got it incorporated into 20 Japanese colleges for the guidance counseling system. So they do the value determination there. I'm not interested in them making a decision about their career path. I'm interested in finding out what they spontaneously are inspired to do. There's a difference, because that's where they're going to excel. And that's not, because, in India, you got parents deciding who you're going to marry. Here's who you're going to decide to marry. In Japan, you have parents deciding what career you're to take. You're going to be an engineer. You're going to be a doctor. And so what happens, and then they wonder why it peters out, and they're just not inspired, and because they're not engaged in it. So I always say, either go do what you love and delegate something, or go and love what you do through linking. So I can show people, if they are all of a sudden under pressure to do something, I can show them how to love that career path and link it to their highest values, or I can help them find out what they spontaneously love doing. Both of them are doable, or a combination of the two. But if you're not doing something, if there's an incongruency with what you're doing on a daily basis, the engagement level in whatever you do is going to go down, and you're not going to excel. Engagement is ridiculously low in some countries and some places, because they can't see how their job duty is helping them fulfill what they value most. Nobody goes to work for the sake of a company. They go to work to fulfill what they value. If they can't see how the job duties help them fulfill what they value, they're not going to be engaged, and they're not going to be excelling. They're not going to be creative. They're not going to innovate. They're not going to feel that it's their work and have pride in their appreciation of their career path. So yeah, I'll be glad to discuss that. I mean, I do that every week.
Wonderful. This is such great content, because I think you're also speaking towards all the leaders of these companies, in the realization that they need to engage their employees and help them find value in the work that they do in order for them to succeed. So it makes a lot of sense.
Well, everybody has this fantasy. Most companies come to me, and I shatter this myth. Here's the values of the company. There is no values to a company. There's values to people. And their leaders' values automatically go from whoever has the most power down to the people who have the least power. And so what happens is they have this autocratic idea that these are the values that you're going to cram down these people's throats, and this is what they have to live by. Well, that's great if you're having disempowered people that are going to just be automatons. That's simple. But today, people are not in that mode. You couldn't do that at Google. You couldn't do that at Facebook. But so I teach people how to respectfully communicate what you value in terms of their individual values, and to allocate the job descriptions in a way and link the job descriptions to their values, so they're inspired to do it. So you don't have to micromanage them. You don't have to push them uphill. You don't have to motivate them. Those are all symptoms of an unwise selection process in the process of engaging people. So I put together systems on how to do that for companies. And it's remarkable, the difference. Because instead of being this autocrat forcing people to do, this is our values, which is pointless.
Yeah.
Pointless.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Well, thanks so much. And I keep on doing what you're doing. I will, as always, link everything up that's connected to you. But it's pretty easy nowadays, isn't it? You just Google your name, and it'll all come right to you. Yeah,
I think we have a few connections to what we're doing now. I think it's 15 million of them now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So yeah, again, enjoy your time on the water there. And thank you again for making time for me. And for the rest of you, I will see you next week. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.